2 years ago. Um, let's see, I actually physically started it in July 2022, but in 2020, the seed dropped after the murder of George Floyd. I've been in nursing over 30 years, and I had been silent, had been quiet, not really speaking up at all. And so something happened on the inside of me in 2020. And so I like literally went into prayer because I was so disgusted with what I saw. And I heard God speak to me, and He said, what you do in this moment will determine your destiny and dictate your future. And so I had to get up and wipe those tears out of my eyes and move
Mhm.
from anguish and frustration to action and impact. And so I found my voice, and I began to start hosting listening sessions, like doing anything I could to amplify, to create safe spaces. And anything, let's talk about this. We are not going to ignore this anymore. And so it has been an amazing journey since I found my voice. And so that was the context of why I started it. So I believe that there's moments that God calls us into, that He's calling us to disrupt, to transform, to do something significant that we were actually born to do. So that's kind of what I like unpacking here on the podcast. So before you start telling us about your fabulous self, tell us, who is Lendra?
So who, you know what? Thank you. So thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here today. Who is Dr. Lendra? Who is Lendra? That's a great question because a couple years ago, I wouldn't have been able to answer that question. Right. And we'll get into that, into the journey, because what happens is as you become a nurse and when you work in nursing 10 years, 20 years, that's who you become. And for me, stepping away from the traditional setting of nursing is what really when I was able to find who I was.
Mm,
So Lendra is, I was a nurse I'm still a nurse, right? You're always a nurse. Once a nurse, always a nurse. I'll say that. However, I've been able to separate that into Dr. Lendra, the entrepreneur, right?
ah,
After being in nursing for 22 years, I've worked across the country. I've worked in so many different areas of nursing. I did travel nursing, worked my way up to nursing leadership, achieved my nurse exec board certification, and eventually my doctor of nursing practice degree. And
awesome.
in my journey, I ended up stepping away from the traditional setting of nursing, and that allowed me to really dig deep and find me and find out who I was and what I really wanted. And I did a lot of soul searching and was able to almost come back recreated. And when I say recreated, because if you had asked me maybe 6 years ago or even 10 years ago, would I have seen myself being a coach, an author, a speaker, a business owner? I wouldn't have seen it. Right. And
Wow.
now I'm able to, speak to people from stages, inspire people through, my book journeys and coach people to a different level in their career. And it was all about, and it all hence started from me putting myself first, right? And
Wow.
prioritizing me and self-care. And I like how you said that, God spoke to you, right? Because at the time, because sometimes we fight back and we question, right? So at the
Yes.
time, when I resigned from my position, I resigned from my leadership position, and I actually didn't have a job to go to. Like there was no job, it was just, I knew that what I was dealing with, I couldn't go on this way. This
Mm,
is not what I wanted to continue to this is not how I wanted to continue to live my life, because wasn't able to identify who I was, right? I was losing who
wow.
I was, and I wasn't recognizing me. And I'm like, even like in my behavior, right? Like, who is
Yeah.
this person? like,
Wow.
like,
Oh my God. Wait, I gotta pause. You have said so much in this first couple of minutes. Wow. That is so profound. Losing you. You didn't discover who you were until you had to step away to find out who you were. That's so profound.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I know so many people in that place of
Mm-hmm.
they've gotten lost within. the profession. They
Exactly.
love the profession, they want to
Right.
continue doing it, but they don't even know who they are and what they
Exactly.
want. Oh my gosh. Okay, go ahead.
Right? Because we become, Lindra the nurse, Lindra the manager, Lindra the director, or Linda the director of nursing. So you become who you are, right? If you become especially when you're working like 50, 60 hours a week, the
Yes.
job pretty much takes most of your time, right? And then you're on call 24/7, right? You're
Yep.
answering all of these calls. But then you have to, when you have a family, you have to recognize that your family needs you too. Your family needs you just as much as this job does. But we've been trained and programmed to believe that if we don't answer that call at 2 in the morning, or if we're not there 60, 70 hours a week, that we're not doing a good job. Like, for whatever reason, we think working hard to the bone, that frames us, and it doesn't. It
No.
doesn't make you a better leader because you're here 60 hours a week. No, it doesn't.
No. You're
It really
exhausted.
doesn't. And no one talks about this. No one
Yeah.
is, really, I don't want to say they're not brave enough, but no one wants to, because no one wants to be that person, right? Because, everyone wants to play the game. And for me, that's not who I was. That's not who, my mother raised me to be. And
Yes.
when I started identifying that, I'm playing the game, that's not me being my authentic self. So, it was time to really step away.